Welcome to SUSD Spotlight, your go-to source for all things happening within the district. Whether it's celebrating student and staff achievements, delving into trending education topics, or highlighting inspiring human interest stories, we've got you covered. Join us as we illuminate the incredible endeavors taking place in our schools and forge connections within our community. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and engaged as we embark on this journey together, spotlighting the extraordinary in SUSD. So welcome to another edition of SUSD Spotlight. We are so excited to have in studio today guests who are going to talk about the Blue Zones Initiative in Scottsdale. First, I'd like to introduce Sarah Kearney, who is the Executive Director of the Scottsdale Blue Zones Initiative. And we are also joined by SUSD's very own Patty Bilbrey, Director of Nutrition Services. Welcome today.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to start with you, Sarah. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Blue Zones project, why you're in this role as Executive Director, and help our listeners begin to understand what you envision for the future of Scottsdale?
I sure can. So again, Sarah Kearney, and I am the leader of the local Blue Zones project team. So really honored and thrilled to be a part of the initiative. And ultimately had no idea this was in my purpose path or was going to be calling me to do this work. But when I really broke down and understood and found out all that this work can do and how impactful it can be for our community, I knew it was just the right fit for me. So I came from a long time career in tourism, working for Experience Scottsdale for over 16 years, really promoting Scottsdale as a world-class leisure travel destination all over the globe. And then I really started to get involved in our community. So in addition to bringing people in my professional career, I also really wanted to start to give back more. So started to get involved with organizations like Scottsdale Leadership, Gigi's Playhouse, Community Celebrating Diversity, and a variety of others, which then kind of brought my personal passions, my professional passions all together in one. And so when the Blue Zones Initiative came to town, it was sort of one of this perfectly packaged everything I actually care about and all aspects of life that was presented to me as an opportunity. And so again, feel really fortunate that I get to wake up every day and do this work ahead.
Well, as the Director of Nutrition Services in Scottsdale, how long have you been here and what led you into doing nutrition services as your calling?
So I actually was born and raised in the East Phoenix, Scottsdale area, closest to Arcadia is where I grew up. And then I worked for Scottsdale Memorial Hospital. That does date me because that's, I think, 4 titles ago for what Scottsdale Memorial Hospital was. And I was a dietech there. Then we moved to Mississippi. And there weren't a whole lot of jobs in Mississippi. So I applied to be the Secretary of Food Service there. And within 3 weeks, I became the Director of Food Service. Kind of fell into it, but fell hard. Love it. It is my passion. I found my calling. I thought I was going to be a graphic designer, but somehow fell into food and nutrition somehow. But I feel like food is art. I feel like food presented well appeals to kids and appeals to people. So I just love what I do. But having the aspect of having kids involved is, to me, just even better. And one thing about Blue Zones and why I latched onto the whole Blue Zones initiative is when we went for the initial presentation at Scottsdale Center for the Arts about 2 years ago, I want to say it was, I literally cried. My menu planner and I were in the audience. We both have tears running down our face, say, this is what we've been looking for. This is just elevates our passion for what we do and doing the right thing for kids. Because aren't we about because kids, right?
We are. Every day, all day. So Sarah, tell us, what is a Blue Zone?
Yes, so that's the first part that you have to understand. So if you're not familiar and if you haven't seen the Netflix docuseries Live to 100, Secrets of the Blue Zones are the longevity hotspots across the globe. So our founder, Dan Buettner, over 20 years ago with a team of researchers, demographers, scientists in partnership with National Geographic, went to all of these original Blue Zones, which include Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, as well as Loma Linda, California. And what they identified is that it wasn't just their genetics that was enabling them to live really fulfilling long lives, but it was their environments and their lifestyle behaviors and choices, which is fantastic. So we aren't becoming an original Blue Zone because when you think about those spaces and places, if you've had the opportunity to travel there or have learned anything about them, is that's not us. But what we can do is we can implement some of these evidence-based practices that have happened across the country in Blue Zones initiatives to really transform and shape our environment, that we can make healthy choices the easier choice, and then that in turn results in overall greater economic vitality and improvement in our well-being for our community.
So why Scottsdale? Why in of all the places in the world, why is Scottsdale looking at becoming a Blue Zones community?
Yes, so we are really fortunate that the leadership at Honor Health really took the initiative to invite Blue Zones into our community. So for anyone that knows Todd Laporte, our CEO at Honor Health, he really was the champion of this work, and in partnership with the city of Scottsdale to, as Patty mentioned when she cried at the first presentation of Blue Zones coming into the community, we did an assessment, right? And that's first and foremost. Blue Zones gets invited into a lot of communities to see if projects are a good fit, but Blue Zones doesn't say yes to everyone. And that's an important piece of the puzzle, because after focus groups and town halls and meeting with individual stakeholders and leadership throughout a community, they have to assess that readiness piece. And a community has to want to make the changes in their community.
What do the community partnerships look like that support this initiative, and where does the school district fit into this?
Yes, so the school district is a huge piece of it, but I'll talk about the others first briefly. And so when you look at our partners in this work, specifically Honor Health, the Cigna Group, and Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona, as well as the city of Scottsdale, when you look at their mission statements and their values, they really are about bringing well-being to the entire community and serving the individuals in their communities as well. And so they came together and really saw and utilized Fort Worth Blue Zone Project as an example that was also spearheaded by a healthcare organization, Texas Health Resources. And they got this great data and they got this great information, and they were like, we have to bring this to Scottsdale for our community as well. And so it really does correlate to a strong leadership. And I think it's also interesting to hear and see, because most people think, wow, a healthcare organization, an insurance provider, those are organizations that want me to be sick, so I have to go utilize the services that are available. But it really is a preventative healthcare model, and it actually wants the community and the people to be healthier on the front end, because that's could be millions or potentially billions of dollars in cost savings for those organizations. And that really ultimately is what they want versus what we may think. And then the school district is a big piece, because when we think about our youth and our children and things that we can teach early on to create and shape really good, healthy habits, it is not getting easier to make healthier choices. Really, in Western civilization across the board, the easiest choice is typically the unhealthy choice, and that's okay. It's all about choices. And so when we're able to have better choices that are available and accessible, then we're able to provide opportunity for well-being for everyone. And so schools, all the way from our littlest to our oldest and our graduating seniors, I think there's a lot of great initiatives that will partner with the school district, but schools are also an important employer. And when we think about our teachers and our staff and the dedication that they have to the youth that they serve, oftentimes when you're in an industry that it's service first, the last person you take care of is yourself. And so we really need our teachers to have well-being prioritized for themselves too, because we don't want them to get burnt out, and we want them to be healthy, and we want them to have all the tools and resources to be able to do that. So schools, and then we can talk food systems, and that's where Patty, we can definitely show her passion behind that in terms of the food component is just one of many components of implementing sort of that Power 9 lifestyle of best practices and lifestyle habits.
The federal nutritional guidelines are already so strict.
They are, and we meet a lot of the Blue Zone criteria. It was interesting. We met a few weeks ago with the Blue Zones group, and we went through and we decided what would be the criteria for our Blue Zones entrees and sides. And when we read them, we're like, we have a lot of things that already meet these criteria. The problem is they're not always the fan favorites of our students. So this is what I love about Blue Zones. It's community. It's all about teaching the community from early on. We don't get the child from birth on. We get them at about 4 or 5 And sometimes habits are already built in. They already know what a chicken nugget is before they come see us. But if Blue Zones in the community is now just a standard and people know what it means and they know about like how this helps their longevity, their health, their wellness, when they come in, it's not going to seem like an unusual thing to eat fresh broccoli, to eat asparagus, to eat quinoa or ancient grains. These are the things we want to put in our menus, not that we're going to ever get rid of a chicken tender. It might be there once in a while, but we're going to start introducing more plant forward, lean proteins, whole foods that are scratch cooked in our menus. And we're also going to have kids help us design these menus and help us come up with these recipes, because sometimes it's just that little tweak that makes all the difference in the world on whether a student's going to eat it or not. And we just want to make sure that we are contributing to what the community as a whole is wanting to do with Blue Zones. I also want to just kind of touch on wellness, because I'm the co-chair of the wellness committee, and we struggle sometimes on how do we implement things that we have ideas in the wellness committee, and that even our community leaders that come in and are part of our wellness committee want to do. But as a whole, it's hard to get that information out or get people on board. But when you have the roadmap that Blue Zones has, and it's going to be something that's integrated every day into what they see in Scottsdale, it's easier for us to get that message out because they're seeing it in other places other than work's telling me to do this. Does that make sense?
No,
It's more of a community feel-good effort, and you feel good about what you're doing for everybody. And I think that that's going to add to, I hate to use the word buy-in, but it is. It's a buy-in or awareness of this really is something that's good for me to do.
And is it something then that's already happening organically, or
Yes.
is it something that you need to be very mindful of and intentional moving forward to seek out these recipes, these ingredients, and at what cost?
Well, it's organically happening. It is. We do need to be mindful on how we implement it to students. Like, we need to have their buy-in, and that's why having kids involved in developing these recipes is good, but it is already organically happening. We're starting to move, after the pandemic especially, move away from so many prepackaged, processed foods to trying to get into a more whole food movement, buying local foods. I just reached out to Sing Farms to see how we could bring in some of their local foods into our menus. Maybe it's not going to be all for all 30 schools every single day, but we can have at least some of these local products brought in. It's going to cost more money, but it's worth it. That's my job to figure out. How do we make it happen? And we will, because we're committed.
We appreciate your willingness to commit and to do that. And I love the idea of students being part of the process, the taste testing, because I do hear from students about, how can we make our food options better? So I think that's fantastic. Sarah, you earlier mentioned the Power 9, and I think that there might be some need for people to understand, what do we mean by the Power 9?
Yes, thank you for asking. I realize I said it and I don't think we had explained it yet. And so in the original Blue Zones, it was the 9 lifestyle common denominators that they look and feel a little different in every community, but ultimately we're all the same. And so just one component of it is the Eat Wisely component, and that really is around all the things that Patty was just talking about as it relates to a plant slant. And I like to make clear the definition that in the original Blue Zones, they weren't vegans or vegetarian. They ate meat, but it was normally for celebratory occasions. And maybe it was only 3 or 4 times a month, and it was in a smaller portion size, maybe the size of a deck of cards. They ate on smaller plates, a variety of other things that I think just Western civilization in general is not accustomed to. And so it is a mindful way and a mindful movement, if you will, in terms of, no, you can still eat all of those things, but here's some other things that you can incorporate and add some more options. So the 80% rule, that one really is around eating until you're 80% full. That I think is non-traditional. I know I grew up in a house that I had to clean my plate to get dessert, and oftentimes I needed to have seconds too before I got that dessert. So that's just a shift. we talk about for our children, it's friends at 5. For our grown-ups, it's wine at 5. And that really is in moderation. When you have a healthy relationship with alcohol, but with food, with friends, and that social connection. Again, the recommended is a Sardinian red wine called Cananao, but there's lots of great variations of some of the health benefits that we discovered and they discovered in the original Blue Zones. But then some of those other areas that, again, kind of beyond the food piece, moving naturally. It's not about rigorous workouts and running marathons or pumping iron. It really is about getting up and down and walking around. When we look at, I think even certainly post-COVID, the norm is that you don't even have to leave your couch. Everything comes to you now. And that's great that there's these modern day conveniences. But I think from a healthcare and a safety standpoint, also great that when people were in a very high level of concern about their health and staying safe and keeping those they love safe, that was great that those things were happening. But now we really do need to get up and get moving again, because we're becoming more sedentary, and I'm guilty of sitting at my computer screen way too long too. So the movement piece, again, very, very much around just natural movement. And then there's the kind of connection piece. We really talk about loved ones first, whether that is loved ones by blood or kinship, whomever you consider to be your loved ones, and putting them first and making it okay to put them first. Having a positive pack of people around you. Making healthy choices, making good choices. I think all of us at any age hit forks in the roads where there are people making good choices and there are people making not so good choices, and we like all of them. So how do we make that decision? And I think that is even a bigger challenge for young people to navigate those crossroads and making good choices. So when you surround yourselves with those positive people around you that are doing good things for themselves and the community, that's always a great choice. Having a sense of belonging is a good piece of it too. So, Patty talked a lot about community, and this is for the community. When you volunteer, when you belong to a faith-based organization and you attend services regularly, regardless of the denomination, there's that sense of belonging and connection into your community. And then we talk about the right outlook. And so this really is around purpose. I think we both touched around purpose, and this is the reason why you wake up in the morning. In Okinawa, it's your ikigai. In Costa Rica, it's your plan de vida. But ultimately is what gets you out of bed. What makes you want to get up and start the day and give back, and with your gifts, your values, what's important to you and how you can contribute into the world. And then the one I always say for last, because I normally forget it, because I'm also still working on it. I'm a work in progress as it relates to downshifting. That is really the de-stress, the shedding the stress. I think we all experience stress in a variety of different ways, and depending on what you do, even professionally, it can put more stress on you than anyone should have. And so it is taking those moments to shed the stress, de-stress. That goes for our children, it goes for our aging population, it's everybody, in finding those moments. And that looks and feels different. So maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's just hanging out with friends. That's the way people de-stress, but that's the downshift component. So that is, I think I got them all, the power 9.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This sounds very much like a lifestyle, of course, but I'm wondering if there's a timeline associated with this initiative, in which time we hope that Scottsdale earns this designation, and maybe even one of our schools.
Yes. So we are on a timeline. So this is a 4-year, 9-month project. So we just kicked off into the first year of transformation. So we're in year 1. So we're just getting started. We had a great community kickoff event in January out in Civic Center. So now's the opportunity for places and people and to get involved and engaged. And so as it relates to reaching that kind of designation to become a Blue Zone certified community, there is a variety of Blue Zones metrics that we have to reach. And ultimately what we want is we're reaching tipping points, critical mass, that we know we're not going to get 100% of people. We're not going to get 100% of the businesses, and that's okay. But when we get to a certain level, based on what's been seen in the past, that now is a sustainable sustainability plan. That is now a sustainable model that now people are living this way, not having to think so hard about it. I often talk myself out of a job when I say this, but to see a time when Blue Zones isn't needed anymore to help people and provide these choices, that's really what we're looking to do. So as it relates to schools specifically, we're looking to get 50% of our schools to become Blue Zones approved. And so our local team is here to assist those schools every step of the way to get them registered and utilizing a menu of best practices that they can implement site-specific for their school. So it's sort of a customized a la carte menu, if you will, that they can pick and choose what works best for them to reach that approval. So we've got a couple schools that are already leading the charge, and I'll call them out because they deserve the recognition, but Echo Canyon has certainly been a champion already, and I think they're getting really close to becoming a Blue Zones approved school.
And this is Superintendent Menzel with an exciting update since we recorded this podcast. We were able to celebrate Echo Canyon becoming the first Blue Zone approved school in the state of Arizona. The ribbon cutting for that celebration was on May 22nd.
And I understand our Chaparral CTE culinary program is also involved in this effort?
Yes, they are. So we've reached out, and they're going to be the ones that help us with some recipe development. So we're really excited about that. And I have to say, I've been in this business 24 years, almost 20 of them here in Scottsdale. And this is probably the most exciting thing I've seen come across our workspace ever. I've lived through a lot of iterations of dietetic research, menu planning criteria that we have to meet by the USDA. But I have to say that this is the thing I think is going to be the most impactful thing we do for students. And I'm really excited. So is our staff. We had Blue Zones come out and do our all-employee meeting last August, and they keep asking us, when are we starting? When are we starting? I'm like, next year. It takes some time, but we're very excited. And I can commit to you that 100% of our cafeterias will be Blue Zone certified.
Which is fantastic. I also think during the initial review, there were visits to the many campuses that have school gardens. There are opportunities for students to learn about good nutrition habits, opportunities to reinforce their learning about other aspects of the curriculum in partnership with what's happening at Blue Zones. And I think about the 3 Ps, people, places, and policy. And the intersection between that global work that Blue Zones is doing and what we're doing here in Scottsdale. And I think the more that we can do to partner with you, to think about opportunities to help our students make good choices for the totality of their life, I think it's a positive. And so it's really exciting. I know that you brought your team out to Echo Canyon for maybe one of your downshifting days, right?
We did, yeah. So we try to do at least a quarterly downshift day where our team goes out into the community to volunteer, and we volunteer together. So it's our opportunity to get to know each other outside of our work environment. And again, fortunately, our work environment is really great work, and it's for the community. And so we did schedule a downshift day where we got to go out to Echo Canyon and see all the wonderful things they're doing. And I think the important part about even Echo Canyon, that entire campus is a community garden and a school garden, but there are people and there are volunteers that sustain that and have been sustaining it. So it's not an if you build a garden, they will come, right? It's now that who's going to care for that and who's going to take care of that garden. And so I think that's a big piece of our school gardens that we want to ensure, again, a sustainability plan, that we know that that garden in perpetuity is going to be cared for and loved for and incorporated into curriculum at all ages. We don't want to just have it be built and then a few years later down the road it not be in existence or not being maintained anymore. And so that ultimately too, as I look at the work, it's not about the work we do in 4 years. It's the work that looking back 20 years from now, 30 years from now, leaving that footprint, that legacy in the community to say, wow, I remember when we started that and this is what it did for now our children, grandchildren, and beyond.
You know, I think of Scottsdale and I think of why we got chosen. And I think it's because it's such an amazing community. It's a community who's going to take that baton when we pass it on. Because I think that's anybody's biggest fear. You start something and hope that it has that longevity, has the sustainability. We're going to pass that baton, and our kids and their kids are going to keep this going. I just know it in this community. I feel it in my
I
heart.
agree. I'm curious, for people who want to get involved or learn more, where would they find more information?
Yes, so we have bluezonesprojectscottsdale.com. Thanks for the plug. It's live and ready to go. And so even our blueprint.
Follow them on Facebook.
Yes, and we're on social media at BZP Scottsdale. But you can find everything there. You can find opportunities to volunteer and get engaged. We have programs that we offer to the community. Again, everything we do at Blue Zones Project Scottsdale is free to participate in. So if you sign up for a program, if you want to get your workplace registered to become Blue Zone approved, if the school wants to get Blue Zones approved, there's no cost that comes with that. And again, that's because of our great partners that have brought this into our community. Even our blueprint is now available online on our website. So you can see it's our strategic plan over the course of the next 4 years. So you can really dive in deeper in terms of what this initiative looks like and how we're going to get there.
Well, this is very exciting. One of the things we like to ask our guests is if they have a favorite teacher or memory from their time in school. We like to elevate and celebrate the teaching profession. And if you have any teacher that comes to mind or someone who poured into your life as a young person that you would like to give a shout out to, we'd like to give you that opportunity.
Gosh, I have so many wonderful teachers that I had in my life. So, you know what? I'll give a shout out to my third grade teacher because I have a third grader now, and I loved third grade. But her name was Miss Kramer, and I loved cursive writing too. And now my third grader loves cursive writing. So I get to now write in cursive again with her at home. And then I think back to third grade when we wrote everything in cursive. So that would be my shout out to Miss Kramer in third grade.
So mine is my fifth grade teacher, Evelyn Snorgrass. And I didn't really love Evelyn Snorgrass when I was in fifth grade because she was hard and she expected a lot out of us. And I look back and I think of what changed in me in fifth grade was I had a teacher who expected a lot. And even though I didn't love it at the time, I look at it changed my whole trajectory. You know, all of a sudden you expected a lot of yourself because somebody else expected that of you. And I also think of Robert Haber, who was my high school art teacher, because he was just cool. You know, he let us play like Aerosmith records. Okay, that dates me in class. But he was cool, and he actually brought out the creativity in me. So I had somebody who expected expectations out of me, out of my academic career, but I also had somebody who let me be creative too with that. So I think arts are important for kids too.
Well, thank you for sharing those stories, and thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to be partners with the Blue Zones Initiative and look forward to widespread community engagement in this partnership. And that will conclude another episode of SUSD Spotlight. We invite you to join us on this exciting podcasting journey anytime or any place on your favorite iTunes or other app that will allow you to listen to our podcast.
And please take a moment to pitch us your podcast ideas. We look forward to hearing from you at susd.org/spotlight.